So welcome everyone. Uh, my name is Eduardo Mandri. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Angel Host. It's a pleasure to host you all today for this webinar that we have prepared called Proven Strategies to Boost Your Airbnb Revenue. So we really hope that you enjoy this webinar as much as we have putting it together. We think there's going to be a lot of interesting information, hopefully a lot of interesting takeaways for all of you to work on your listings and to improve your sales, which is the final objective. In the agenda today, we're going to take just 5 minutes to go over who is Angel Host. I want to explain where we're getting all this information from. And most of you on this call probably don't know much about us. But the bulk of the time, the next 30 minutes, we're going to take them to talk about the strategies that we have seen have worked time and time again to boost revenues. And we also want to leave some time at the end of the presentation to go over any questions you might have. So we're here to answer anything that comes to mind. Very well. So we're Angel Host, a company founded 6 years ago, and our mission is quite simple. We are here to help Airbnb hosts increase their revenues. We do so by helping optimize their listings and taking care of the pricing strategy. We have a very simple methodology that we follow with all of our clients. Step one, we always do a listing optimization. We'll talk more about this later. We take a listing health score when a client joins our company. We then apply the many AI tools as well as the human expertise in our company to craft a perfect listing. And all of that leads our clients to have better ranking and conversion. The next thing we do has to do with pricing management. We love math. That's our specialty. So we start by doing a pricing and market analysis of the listings that we manage. We then set up dynamic pricing and many other setups. And that essentially allows our clients to capture more bookings. And because we like to be transparent, we like visibility, we provide all of our clients not only with that initial evaluation of their listings, we immediately provide them with an owner's dashboard and quarterly reports so that you can clearly see what's happening and how is your listing performing. Our promise is simple. Clients that work with us see better rankings, higher conversions, more bookings, and higher revenues. Now, we've been doing this all over the world, and every time we implement this methodology, we see at least 30% increase in revenues. No, we're not magicians. We just like to follow a very strict methodology on what works, and we've done it all over the world. We currently manage more than 1,200 properties in 50 cities around the world. We have a team of 40 specialists, and we're a #1 partner for Airbnb, with whom we share a lot of information. We actually create events together. So a lot of the information I'm going to be showing to you today, actually the information comes directly from Airbnb. So talking about Airbnb, and now let's jump right into this. As you all know, we're all part of this sharing economy, and it's just incredible the growth of Airbnb around the world. As of last count, and according to their official numbers, they have roughly 8 million listings and growing. So that's a pretty impressive number. Now, of course, with that growth also comes more competition. 2024 has been a year that has seen a little bit of a slowdown in terms of bookings and more people getting into the Airbnb world. So obviously that creates competition, and it's important to find ways to stand out. Now, to make matters a little bit harder for hosts around the world, Airbnb is becoming more and more strict in terms of who they allow to be on their platform. At last count, they have removed already over 300,000 listings that have bad review scores. And why wouldn't they? With 8 million listings all over the world, they can afford to remove the listings that they believe are not going to provide that perfect service to the guests. Now, in order to succeed on Airbnb, it's important to start talking about the Airbnb algorithm and how does Airbnb decide what to display on the homepage or any search that you conduct. And you have to keep something in mind. For every search, Airbnb can choose between thousands of listings, thousands of them. So who does Airbnb display? And that has been the subject of a lot of discussion. And let me tell you, we have the answer for that. Airbnb will display the listings that have higher conversion rates. Airbnb is a business. They're interested in displaying the things that people will book. If your listing is not getting booked for whatever reason, and we're going to see some of those reasons coming up, they will simply have no reason to present your listing, sorry. So listings that are more likely to be booked are the ones that rank highest. So the question is, in order to sell more, you need to convert better. So the question is, how do you convert better? Well, there's three factors that you have to keep in mind to maximize your visibility and to secure more bookings. It's about your listing, it's about your pricing, and it's about your reviews. So there's no rocket science, there's no magic formula. It's about these three things, and we're going to explore each one of those things and give you specific tips and actionable items on how each one of those, what can you do to get those three things right. So let's start with the listing, and we like to call it the art of attraction, right? And the listing, of course, is extremely important, starting with your photos. I'm always impressed to see just how many listings have bad photos. And while having a bad photo doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get bookings. Of course, if your listing has good pictures, it's definitely going to be a plus and it's going to get you more clicks and more bookings. Now, just a few tips here. And again, this is not rocket science, but the main picture that you choose, called a hero image, has to be something that sets you apart. If everybody in your competition is displaying a pool, maybe you want to display the pool, but from a different angle, on a slightly different way. The next 4 pictures, remember, not everybody's browsing on their phone. Some people are browsing on a desktop. And that's why the next 4 pictures are also extremely important. Now, everybody will tell you, have professional pictures, and we are all for having professional pictures. However, it is very important that you do not mislead the guests with pictures that are actually a little bit too nice. By the way, before I continue, some of you might have noticed that on the lower left hand of your screen, there's a little QR code. Just in case you have to leave early or whatnot, we invite you to click on that, to scan that code. And we have a special promotion for all of you at the end. But if you cannot stick with us until the end and you want to learn more about that and also get a copy of the presentation, just scan that code and we'll get that over to you. So let's keep going with the listing. Apart from the photos, the title is extremely important. And here's a trick on how to write a good title. Writing a good title is not about saying 2-bedroom apartment in Houston. It's not about that. In fact, you should never mention the number of bedrooms. That's something that people already entered in their search criteria. What you need to use the title for is to present to your audience what will catch their attention. The way we do it is we actually analyze the ratings, the guest ratings, the reviews that people have left from your property. And that's what we use. We see what people like. And if it's the pool or the jacuzzi, or maybe it's the view or the proximity to restaurants, that's exactly what we're going to be using in selecting the right title. So again, don't go for little icons or, words like BDR for bedrooms and things like that. It's simply unnecessary. And it's a very premium real estate that you have there that you want to make good use of. And aside from the pictures and the titles, there's something else that really catches people's attention. And that's the first paragraph. And actually, most people, that's all they see from your listing. As you can see, there's always a show more button, but did you know that 75% of people don't actually click on that button? So this is the part where it's very important that you use this space to include just 5 short bullet points on why should guests care about your property. Again, let's face it, none of us like to read long text. Our attention spans are very short, so we just have to make it short and sweet and explain to people why they should care about our property. So this is the opportunity to highlight what sets your property apart. Now, amenities. You will read a lot about what amenities should I have? What should I have in my listing in order to rank high? And this is particularly important because when you do a search on Airbnb, you can start applying filters and say, only show me properties that have air conditioning or that allow pets. Well, the list that you have here on your screen was provided to us by Airbnb directly. They send us a monthly report for all of the listings that we manage, and they tell us, please pay close attention to the 14 amenities that you have here on your screen. So it's important to, some of them are so easy to have, like a coffee maker or coffee basics, and you would be surprised just how many Airbnbs don't have that. Or they have a television, but it's not a smart TV. You're probably going to get a bad review if someone shows up at your place and there's a very old television set, unless that's what makes your property special, right? Maybe you're in the middle of the woods and no one wants to watch television there. So, but it's important to understand what your clients are looking for, and these amenities are very important. Now, a little known secret, and actually Airbnb makes a very important point about this, 8% of the inventory or the calendar of any given property is usually blocked by accident. Sometimes you think, oh, I'm going to lend my property to a friend or family, or maybe you were thinking of using it, or you did a block for maintenance or something, and then you just forgot to remove it. It's something that you should always keep an eye on. If your dates are blocked, you will simply never show up and your listing won't be ranking at all. Now, we talk about the listing. Now let's talk about pricing. And when it comes to pricing, in the past, it was okay to price your property according to seasonality. High season, high prices, low season, low prices. The truth of the matter is that nowadays, dynamic pricing is almost a must. What is dynamic pricing? Dynamic pricing are prices that constantly fluctuate every single day according to supply and demand. Is the price that you might not like, but is the price that actually going to get your property booked? Now, when you look at the dynamic pricing calendar, like the one we have here on the screen, that's essentially how it looks. As you can see, there's not a single day that has the same price, because every weekend might be different, right? Maybe there's some weekends that there's some local events or it's a holiday. And maybe there's some weekdays that it's the students have exams, and therefore it's very unlikely for someone to want to rent your property during that time. There's a number of reasons why supply and demand goes up, especially demand. And that's why having a dynamic pricing strategy is so important. Now, whenever you have a dynamic pricing strategy or you're setting up your pricing yourself, it's very important to always analyze your property in a very objective way. We see time and time again, clients come to us and say, well, my property is the best property in the area, and my uncle says that he has never seen anything as good as my property before. But the truth of the matter is that you have to be very objective. Where am I located? What amenities do I have? What are my guest ratings? As we will see a bit in a few minutes, if your ratings are not very high, you simply can't request a user, a guest, to pay a high price for your property. You have to sacrifice the price until you can get to the ratings that will give confidence to people to book your property at a high price. Now, the three most common errors we see people in the Airbnb market do are, number one, assuming that the rate has to be the same or higher than last year. You're thinking, well, last summer I was renting at $150 a night or $200 a night. I should be able to rent at the same price this summer. Well, it depends. Maybe there is more supply, or maybe people are traveling to a different destination. So it's important to keep an eye on what we call your pacing. How many bookings are you getting now, for example, for the summer? And how many bookings did you have last year at this time for the summer? Are you above or are you under? And based on that, make decisions as to whether you have to increase your rates or reduce your rates. Another error that we see that is very common is not considering your average guest rating. Like I said before, if your rating is at 4.3, 4.4, and there's so many listings out there with a rating of 4.7 or 4.8, why would someone book your listing? So it is important to understand that if you have good ratings, you can request a higher price than if you don't. And the most important error we see is basing pricing decisions on gut feelings. This is what I think, I feel, I know the market better than anybody else. I lived in this neighborhood forever. That doesn't mean, unless you have the data to back up your claims, you have to always make your decisions based on actual data. Okay, so moving on, some of the pricing setups, we're actually going to have a webinar specifically talking about pricing and all of these things. For now, I just want to give you a brief overview of some of the key setups that sometimes people forget that can actually drive you more bookings. The first one has to do with length of stay discount. A length of stay discount is the discount that you program on Airbnb for weekly stays or for monthly stays. And having those weekly or monthly discounts is what's going to allow you to attract those weekly and monthly bookings. If you don't have these discounts configured, you will simply never or very rarely get any longer stay bookings. The second setup has to do with minimum stays, right? If you have your Christmas 2025 unsold, you better check that it has at least a minimum stay of 4 or 5 nights, right? Otherwise, someone might book your property for just 1 or 2 nights for Christmas, and that will basically ruin your high season. On the other hand, you don't want to have a 7-night minimum stay for next week if you are in a winter destination or in what could be a summer destination, doesn't matter, but minimum stays are super important, as well as orphan nights discounts. Sometimes we think, I want to sell my property at $150 a night, but hey, you might have one empty night between 2 bookings that is probably going to go unsold, and you might want a discount. Like I said, we're going to have another webinar that is going to go very much in depth into this subject in case you're interested in learning more. There's many other setups. I'm not going to go through this right now, but again, it's a full webinar that we would provide to talk about all these important setups pricing wise. Now, one important thing that I want to mention today is flexibility. And what we mean by flexibility is having at the end of the day, you have to think of your Airbnb as a business. And you have to make your decisions based on data and based on what's going to bring you the highest revenue. And by managing, over the course of our 6 years, we have managed thousands of different listings. And time again, we've seen that the clients that basically say, you know what, let's trust the data, let's make data-driven decisions, and let's sell my property at the price that the market is supposed to pay, will always, 10 times out of 10, produce way higher results than those that have no flexibility and decide just from gut feeling what the rate should be. I actually have here an example of a client, property 1. I'm not going to disclose exactly where it is in case they're here in this webinar today. But this individual, a great guy, told us, I do not want to sell my property ever at less than $250 a night. It's a great property. I paid top dollar for it. I don't want to rent at less than $250. So what ended up happening is that with that minimum in mind, we ended up renting at an average rate of $264. That's good. And a 44% occupancy in the year. Very nice, $42,000 of revenue. Now, there's a sister property, literally a replica of that property right next door. They were both sold at the same time. And this other owner said, you know what? I understand that sometimes I have to lower my prices. As long as I make at least $125 a night to cover my electricity cost and some other variable costs, I'm okay. In that case, we ended up selling more nights at a lower price, but look at these numbers. He produced $70,000. So the difference between the person that had this number in mind and was married to the idea, I do not want to sell at less than 250, ended up producing way less revenue. It doesn't mean that we sold many nights at $125. We might have sold a few nights at 150, 160, and all of those nights produce additional revenue for property number two. Now, you might be thinking, yes, but maybe property two had more electricity cost and more wear and tear. I'm sure they did, obviously with an 82% occupancy rate, but I can assure you that the costs were not $28,000 higher in the year than property number one. So flexibility, data-driven prices pays off. Let's talk now about guest ratings. And this is basically one of the most important things on Airbnb, if not the most important thing. And we like to call it the obsession that pays off. We have to be obsessed about ratings. And let me back this comment with actual data. These numbers come from Airbnb, okay? And these numbers show you the percentage of listings that have a rating higher than 4.5. 94% of all listings on Airbnb have a rating of 4.5 or more. In fact, 25% of the listings, that's 2 million listings, have a rating of more than 4.9. Now, what that means is that only the 6% bottom listings have ratings under 4.5. So now you can start understanding why Airbnb decided to suspend listings that had 4.3 or 4.2. A lot of people found that unfair, but I understand that it's a smart business decision on the side of Airbnb. And just this 25%, like I said, represents over 2 million listings. Actually, that's why when you get 4.9, you become a guest favorite. Now, we have done a lot of research and a lot of analysis. We have analyzed thousands of searches on Airbnb, and the numbers that you're seeing here are based on a very large sample. And we know that when you do a search for any destination, whether you're searching for Miami or London or Mexico City, whatever destination around the world, the first 100 results, that's the first 15 pages, will have a rating, the listings will have a rating of 4.7 or higher. It doesn't mean that if you have a lower rating, you won't show up, but look at the number. Each one of these lines represents the property and where it fell between 4.8 and 4.9 rating. So yes, there was one sole property that had a rating of about 4.2 that showed up, but the majority of them had ratings over 4.7. Now, if you look at last minute at the first page, it's even greater, right? Again, Airbnb has thousands of listings to present. So I invite you to do any search on Airbnb and take literally copy and paste the ranking, the ratings on the first 18 listings, and you're going to see that about 80 to 90% of them have a rating over 4.7. So we have to be obsessed about ratings if we want to appear more often on the search results. That's the bottom line. Now, you might be familiar with the guest favorite and the superhost banners that now are showing up. Well, it's the same thing. If you do a search for last minute bookings, you're going to find that 67% or almost 2/3 of all the results will either be guest favorites or superhost. So clearly, Airbnb favors those listings to show up at the top. And if you look at far out, if you're doing a search right now for the summer, there's so much inventory that Airbnb can display that, of course, they're going to be even more strict. Instead of 40% being guest favorites and 27% superhost, it goes up to actually almost 80% between those two categories. Now, not everything is lost. Of course, if you're not a superhost or a guest favorite, doesn't mean you're not going to get bookings. You will get bookings because there's still about 18% of the listings that will be displayed without that banner. But again, it reduces the number of times that you're going to be displayed and therefore the number of bookings that you can get. And on top of that, there's no hiding, right? If you have this actually is a screenshot that we just took a few minutes ago. This is a listing with 4.39 review score. You would think that's not that bad, but look at what Airbnb is doing now. It's saying this home is in the bottom 10% of eligible listings. I mean, who's going to book a listing where Airbnb is telling you it's at the bottom 10%? They're almost telling you go and search for something else. And you know why Airbnb does this? Airbnb doesn't like issues. And Airbnb knows that properties that have low ratings are more likely to call their call center, are more likely to give them trouble, as opposed to a listing that has a high rating. So we have to be obsessed about getting good ratings. And there's no shortcuts to a good ranking. Don't let someone on the internet tell you we have some secret miracle sauce that will get you to the top of the rankings. Unless they tell you we're going to work on your listing, we're going to work on your pricing, and you have to work on delivering an amazing guest service, there are no shortcuts to get a good ranking. Now, there's one exception, a very interesting exception, and that's a new listing. Remember when I was showing you this number? There's this little green part, this 6%. Those are new listings, okay? And it's normal. The Airbnb algorithm with new listings, they don't know if the listing is good or bad. They have to give it a chance. They have to put a certain number of spots reserved for new listings. So when you launch a new listing, that's why it's so important that you don't launch a listing and then say, well, I'm going to take the good pictures later. I'll deal with pricing later. You have to do it from day one, because there's going to be a 2-week period, roughly a week or 2 weeks, where you're going to get an artificial boost. You're going to be displayed amongst all of the other listings because the Airbnb algorithm is testing you out to see if things work or don't. So it's temporary. So you better have everything properly set up to maximize your revenues. Now, the key elements that will affect your ratings, of course, are the obvious ones: cleaning, good maintenance, but also the response time, right? And most importantly, problems are normal. Everybody has issues. We all have difficult guests. So it's not about, oh, I hope I never get any complaints. It's about what you do when you get a complaint. It's about how you act when you are facing a problem. Hey, I showed up and the door wouldn't open. The internet is not working. The AC stopped working at midnight. Whatever the reason is, it's important that you always act on it. And we always recommend our clients, listen, sometimes it's better not to obsess about little things. Just give them a discount, give them a small gesture, allow them for late checkout if you have no one checking in that same day. Maybe give them a voucher to go for a coffee. And if there was a little bit of damage, it's better to just absorb those $20, $30, $40, $50 of damage than contacting the client and risking for them to give you a bad review. The importance and the value of good reviews is such, it's so big, the value that they can bring, that you're better off just paying a blind eye to some of those things. The last point we want to share with you is the fact that I've been saying about data guiding your decisions. Well, the good news is that Airbnb provides you with some pretty amazing metrics to let you know if your listing, for example, is doing well or is not doing well. They provide basically 3 conversion metrics that are very important. First page search impressions, search to listing conversions, and listing to booking conversion. Essentially, I mean, it's just a lot of text, but what it means is that what percentage, and you can find them actually on the Insights tab on your Airbnb menu, and then you have booking conversion. This first number, first page search impression rate, tells you for every 1,000 listings, how many times did your property show up? This particular property showed up 49% of the times. That's pretty good. From the times that they show up, how many times people actually engage with your listing? How many times do they click to find out more? And that's where your picture, your title, and your price will play the biggest role in getting people to click. And then once people click, how many of them actually end up buying or booking your property? And that's what this percentage here shows. And this is just the overall conversion rate. I'm going to share now with you our numbers so that if you want to pull this report by yourselves and see how your listing performs, you have a benchmark. So based on the more than 1,200 listings that we manage, I can tell you that our conversion funnel looks as follows. 45% of the times, our listings show up on the first page. So if you have somewhere around 45%, you're doing okay. If you're in the low 30s or less than that, there's a good opportunity for improvement. We have a 23% search to listing conversions, meaning 23% of people that see our ads actually click on them. Again, if you're between 20 and 25%, that's good. If you're under this, you have some room for improvement. And at the end of the day, this is the ultimate number, right? You should have 0.6% conversion means that you're going to get 6 bookings for every 1,000 people that search for your listing. The average on Airbnb is 0.3. Our average is 0.6. So again, it gives you an idea for you to compare your numbers and determine how well your listing is performing. So in summary, before we move on to the Q&A, we learned today that the Airbnb market is amazing, but it's growing, and with the growth of Airbnb also comes a growth in competition. So it's very important to try to differentiate your property from the others. Conversion is king. If you want to rank higher, you have to have your listing convert. And conversion happens thanks to your listing, happens thanks to choosing the right price, and also about getting the right reviews. By the way, quick parenthesis on reviews. We have some things that we can do as a company that actually allow us, whenever we see that a listing has a few bad reviews, there's ways that we can have to move things around and get that listing to take a new life again. But anyhow, those are the things that we do as a company. Your listing matters. So please don't forget, have great photos. Don't mislead people, but have great photos. The title and the highlights of what your guests appreciate the most is what drives what your text has to mention. We actually use AI and the expertise of our team to actually analyze all the reviews, and based on that is that we actually write titles and that we write the highlights. Strategic pricing is essential, so you have to have dynamic and data-driven pricing. If you don't, it doesn't mean you're not going to sell. It just means that you're going to be leaving money on the table. You're not going to be selling as much as you could, or simply put, you're probably going to be booked 100% of the year, but probably not at the right price, not at the price that will maximize your bottom line. And last but not least, we have to have an obsession for guest ratings, as they will define success. As I showed you, the results that Airbnb show and they display have to do so much with ratings that it's imperative that you pay very close attention to this. So before we move on to the questions, for all of you here participating in the webinar today, we have a special promotion. As some of you might know, what we do as a company is precisely everything that we mentioned here. You know, we take care of listing optimization and pricing and whatnot. And we're offering you the first month for free, $25 of the second month. So pretty much a way for you to test us for free, see if we can help you increase your bookings and your conversion. If we can, fantastic. You know, we'll be partners for a long time. And if not, there's simply no strings attached. We offer different pricing packages, all of them very affordable, so that the amount that you pay us is a very small portion of your revenues. And we usually pay for ourselves because we produce much higher results than this. And for those of you interested in learning more, we have some upcoming webinars given by other members from our team, from our Director of Revenue Management to talk more about pricing strategies, our COO talking about the art of crafting irresistible listings, and our Director of Guest Experiences talking about how to deal with difficult guests and get good ratings. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining. And we're going to move now into a Q&A. If anybody has any questions, please, we're here to answer them. And maybe, Man, you can help me with this.
Yeah, of course. So please take the time to scan this QR code and go to this link after our webinar. As Eduardo mentioned, the offer is only for the next 24 hours. We'll make sure to share this information, the presentation and the webinar with you. If there was something specific that you felt like you needed to address for your own listing. I think there was a question that was addressed to us in the chat, and I think our one of our team members tried to respond to that question. I'm not sure, Eduardo, if you want to
I,
give.
I I don't see the questions, Seema. I'm not sure what happens, but I don't see the Q&A here. So I would appreciate your help if you could.
Sure, sure, no problem. There's a few questions. Well, why don't I start up with one that is that's relevant here for everyone probably. Specifically, it says that Anonymous says, "I'm nervous about trusting a pricing tool.
Mhm.
Okay, what if it ends up setting rates too low? What's your
Yeah,
opinion, Eduardo?"
yeah. It's a good point. Some dynamic pricing tools, like the one offered by Airbnb, is well known to sometimes price things incredibly low. So that's why it's important to set it up properly, setting up the minimum rates, so that even if the tool thinks that, oh, I need to sell this property at $25, well, at $25, we're simply not interested in renting. Thank you very much. So properly setting up the tool and monitoring the tool is imperative. We're still not at the point where these tools can be just set free and set and forget. But once once you configure them properly, they really make a big difference. You know, they make a big difference.
We've got another question that just came in. How about other platforms like VRBO and Booking.com? Do you
Mhm.
also provide pricing or listing recommendations for these as well through your platform?
Yes, yes. In fact, most of our clients are on Airbnb, but we also have a fair number of clients that are on VRBO and Booking.com. And what we do is we simply connect our property management system to all platforms so that it synchronizes prices and it synchronizes the listing and the pictures and everything else. So it's the same principle. What's important to remember about VRBO and Booking.com is that they charge a higher fee to the host, but at the same time they don't charge anything to the guest that is booking. So it's important to do price discrimination and to always make sure that your rates on booking.com and vrbo are actually higher. The guest will end up paying the same as they pay on Airbnb, but that way you can actually offset some of the high commissions that you have to pay on those platforms. So it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and those are kind of the setups that we do for our clients as well. I know we had a couple of questions about the fact that they don't see the conversion information under their insights. Now, I know
Mhm.
for Airbnb decides to show, different options to different hosts, sometimes puts it in another area. But as a client, we can access, that kind of information for you. So I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah, it's normally when you log into your page, into your account, sorry, there's and then you switch to hosting because when you click on your image, there's going to be an option to switch to hosting. And once you're in the switch to hosting, there's Insights tab. Sometimes they move it around depending on not everybody sees the same version of Airbnb. But there would if you browse around, you'll find an Insights tab and has the booking conversion tab. We pay very close attention to these numbers. We download them on a monthly basis to understand, what is our conversion rate and to help our team determine when changes are needed or when a change that they made to a listing actually gave good results. But this is where you find them.
yeah, and you never know. Airbnb may, for a new listing, not necessarily show this yet, and they have a lot of their own way of determining things. But if
Mhm.
I just want to mention to everyone, if you have any other questions, please do post it. I can see there is another question here. I never find my listing in the search. Is that something you would fix?
Well, it's also very important to understand that the chances of you looking at finding your listing is not that high, because remember that Airbnb uses machine learning and displays to you what you're also more likely to be interested in. So the same way that TikTok or Instagram's feeds will feed you with the type of stories that you're interested in because they realize what you have been viewing the most. It's the same with Airbnb. The algorithm is going to try to display things to you. If you have a family, maybe they're going to show you more things that are better suited for families. And maybe you yourself are searching and you don't see that information, right? It doesn't mean that other people are not seeing. And that's why you have to rely on metrics. If the metrics are telling you you are being displayed, it's because you're being displayed. You might not see it, but you're being displayed. And sometimes you might say, well, I keep seeing my competitor time and time again. Chances are is that you clicked on your competitor, and therefore Airbnb assumed that you were interested in that listing. So next time you search, you're going to see your competitors more often than you're going to see your own listing. So don't be fooled by that. That's just the algorithm doing what it's supposed to do.
Okay, we've got another question here. I'll try my best to paraphrase it. Basically, they have their residence on Airbnb. They have very little availability in the winter, but lots of availability in the summer. They're new to Airbnb, and their first guests will be arriving at the end of January and beginning of February in weekends. And somebody has already booked in August. And I think what they're trying to say is it worth joining now if their availability is in the future? And how would they address that?
Yeah, well, it's at the end of the day, if your property is rented, I would say at least 9 months per year, especially during the season that guests are looking to visit the city where you are from, then it's worth it. Of course, in our particular case, we charge on a monthly basis. So if you're only going to be renting your property 3 months a year, then you're probably better off just doing all the setups by yourself for those 3 months. Typically, you won't see the best results when you are only renting a few months per year, like 3 or 4, because then the algorithm starts learning about your property and it starts showing it and displaying it. But if it sees that you haven't had a positive rating in the last 6 or 7 months, they assume that it's an inactive listing, and therefore you're going to be less displayed. Again, it doesn't mean that you won't rent, okay? Especially if you're in a city that has not a lot of supply. It all depends, right?
One thing I would add to that is to make sure that your listing is always looking at its best, taking the principles you've learned here as well, and understanding that bookings come in advance of availability. So
Mm.
if your summer is the time that you are mostly available, depending on your market, you may need to pay extra attention and get the bookings for summer starting 1, 2, or even 3 months in advance, depending on the specific market that you're in. Because come July, June, and you're starting to focus, most of those bookings at the high rates that you're able to do in advance are already gone, and especially the longer term stays as well. Okay, wonderful. Again, if you have any other questions, please do add them to the Q&A. I know we're at the time here, but I'll ask maybe one more question, two, if we have time. How do you figure out what my listing should say? Do you work with me on it, or do you just make the changes you recommend yourselves?
Well, when we normally take care of the changes ourselves, we will communicate to you what are the changes that we made. And of course, if you don't like them, we can always change them. Again, we base ourselves on data and what we see works best. And we won't be drafting a title or a description just based on our gut feeling. It's going to be based on a very careful analysis of what your guest ratings and what are they saying and what they appreciate. And if they appreciate the jacuzzi, you can be sure that the jacuzzi will be mentioned in your title. So again, it's all data-driven decisions. And that should hopefully give you peace of mind that, we're doing the right thing.
Wonderful. With that, we'll let people get back to lunch, dinner, breakfast, wherever you may be from. Thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you, Eduardo, for leading this webinar. And again, please join us on and scan that QR code that you see so that you can join Angel Host and be our newest client and benefit from this offer over the next 24 hours. Thank you,
Perfect.
everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.